Hello, welcome to Fig Tree Christian. I'm Pastor Melissa, and I'm so glad that you are here today. I am going to go into the Gospel of Luke today, and the Gospel of Luke is the investigative reporter gospel. It's the one where he's going to try to gather as many different stories as possible and bring it together. That is exactly what he says he's doing at the beginning of the gospel. So that's how we should understand it. He is not a first-hand account. He is a second-hand account, sharing the story with a friend or a colleague. And I love it because it kind of, in my mind, Luke is the best gospel. Everyone has their favorite. Some people really like Mark because it's probably the closest to the actual event. Sometimes it's called the sayings of Jesus. And some people like John because it's definitely for the early church and what you're supposed to do after Jesus is gone. But for me, I am all about the reporting. I am all about the nitty-gritty details, and Luke will always be my favorite. I probably shouldn't speak too soon. I have half a lifetime left. So let's begin by reading our story today. Like I said, we're from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 12, verses 13 through 21. Please follow along with me if you wish in RSV. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me." But he said to them, "Friend, who set me to be a judge or arbiter over you?" And he said to them, "Take care. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions." Then he told them a parable. The land of a rich man produced abundantly, and he thought to himself, "What if I should do? For what should I do? For I have no place to store my crops." I am failing today, aren't I? Then he said, "I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, 'Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, this very night your life is being demanded of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be?' So it is with those who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich towards God." May God add blessings to this reading. It's an interesting story because it really kind of encapsulates a lot of issues that we're dealing with today, and a lot of questions that we want to ask and answers we want answered. And Jesus is not really answering them very well in what would be our opinion if we really were to ask Jesus those questions. I see a lot of stories in this one, things that I want to go back to, things I want to consider. This man was only asking that a brother share the inheritance. And immediately, I feel like the prodigal son, because who would not have an inheritance? The father dies, and back then it would have been split among the brothers of the family, not the sisters. The women had to marry into other families to gain inheritance through their husband's inheritance. Now, the only person I can think of, and this was just a parable, this wasn't even, Jesus didn't even say it was something that really happened, would be the prodigal son. The prodigal son wasted his inheritance during his father's life and had nothing. So he is who I'm thinking of, would want to go to Jesus and say, "Hey, why doesn't my brother share the inheritance?" Because he would have gotten everything and the brother would have gotten nothing. This, in a very real way, would be the comeuppance of taking the entire inheritance and spending it all in lavish ways in a short amount of time, rather than being like the good grasshopper, or not the good grasshopper. The parable is the grasshopper was foolish and the ant was wise. So be like the good ant and store up things for the winter so that they could survive those times. but now that brother has nothing. Like I always read the prodigal son. I don't know why I get the Good Samaritan and the prodigal son mixed up. I think because I imagine that the prodigal son is also the one who's been beaten up and left on the side of the road. It's weird like that. There's no connection there at all, but I just do it. I just mentally end up there. So Jesus is telling this guy that it doesn't matter, that wanting the inheritance or a piece of the brother's inheritance is not what's important. And then he goes on a tangent about physical and spiritual things, that you should be building up spiritual things because that is what is real. That brings me to the point today. So one of my favorite desert fathers are the ones that came about after Paul. They lived in the Middle East. They were trying to figure out what the first ones that were trying to figure out what the Bible was about. And one of those desert fathers is Augustine. Augustine is a great desert father, my favorite. He really struggled with his mortality and his fallenness. And he had a fallenness that most of us would find silly at best, but really encapsulates how he was feeling. There's a story that he wrote, where he lived next to a pear orchard. And all these trees are there, and they're growing these absolutely delicious pears. And he goes and steals some of these pears. And this weight of stealing the pears off of the tree is enough to make him feel guilty for the rest of his life, basically. But he knows that he is saved by Jesus's grace. And so that's a big story of God's grace. Is Augustine stealing pears as a boy, but as an adult, he is forgiven through God. One thing he said that the absolute pinnacle of the thing he says that carries with me, as this is so Augustine, and I've written about it and I've spoken about it, is the idea of reality. That this right here, and this right here, and this right here, and this right here, these are things I can physically touch, and I can hold in my hand, and I can feel the texture of. But to Augustine, these things are not real. These things are not real because they will eventually go away. That all this work I spent on this, it's not real. This will eventually molder or just disintegrate, or whatever is going to happen to it. This painting on this rock cannot last forever. It will eventually no longer be there. It might take, because it's acrylic paint, so it's actually going to last probably a lot longer than this will end up lasting. It will eventually, thousands of years from now, the paint will flake off. It will no longer be. There is, when Fig Tree first started, there was this sign that was made: I shall have nothing before God's eyes. It was painted on boards. It's colorful. I like it. It's over there, but it's actually behind some things. On the back of that sign, I made a point to write, "This will not last forever, but God's love will." Something of that nature. I haven't seen it in years, but it is of that nature, because I was mentally thinking Augustine when I wrote those words. Because if by some chance that fig tree happens to become something more than what it is now, then maybe what I have made over the years will hold special significance to those people. At least that's what I was thinking a dozen years ago, back when this started. I was thinking of Augustine because while everything I showed you, while we call them real, they are not real. He was saying that the things that are eternal is what is real. And God is what's eternal. So God is the reality. The Spirit is the reality. The things that happen that we cannot see is the reality, not the stuff. There's a great poem that you can look up called "Upon the Burning of My House," and she goes into this without realizing who Augustine is. When her house, her possessions, everything she owns is burned to the ground. She no longer has them. The chest that she had in her house that held her dearest possessions is no longer there. And she talks about the reality that she will eventually, she survived, she will be okay. But what was real also survived, and that was her relationship with God. That what couldn't be seen was what was important. And I love that poem too, because it reminds me of Augustine. And when it comes down to it, that point is the one that I live by, because I've lost things. I have lost so much. I was just talking about this with my husband last night, that when my dad won custody, my mom sold off every single toy, every single possession that I considered my own. She sold off to get some cash when she lost the house. Sold everything. The piano my great grandmother had gifted her because she loved to play piano, she sold for, I believe it was like $100, something like that. She got $100 off of this piano, and it broke my heart. And I think of those toys, even today, I think of those toys as a 44-year-old woman. They still are mentally with me, even though they're not physically with me. And I've lost everything again when I moved into the basement of my dad's house, and because I wanted privacy as a teenager, and the basement flooded, and I lost a good portion of everything again because everything got waterlogged and moldy and nasty, and I had to throw away a good portion of what I had. And once again, some of my favorite clothes. I went to summer camp, and I have a habit of taking it from my duffel bag and putting it in a trash bag so that my clean clothes stay clean and my dirty clothes stay dirty. And I put that bag of clothes next to my bed, and someone thought it was trash and threw it away. I'm used to losing things. And there are other stories, but I am used to having my things thrown away or sold away. And it's something that I've had to come to terms with over the years of what is real and what is not. And my things are not the reason that I love those things. That's a bit abstract, but let me go into more detail. It's the story behind those items that hold more importance than the items themselves. I still have the memories of playing with those toys. I still have the memories of the things that were in that flooded room. Those things still survive. They could not be destroyed. They can be washed away a little, true. I don't remember them in the same way that I used to. The unimportant parts of those items are no longer in my brain. I don't need those things. They're gone. But the important part, who gave them to me, the joy I had having them, still stays with me, because that's where the reality is, not in the items themselves. So when this man is asking for an inheritance, he might not be asking for anything other than to get this brother reprimanded. Like, he wanted something and he wasn't going to get it, and he wanted Jesus to tell him he was wrong. And in that's the problem. Because the reality is the relationship. The reality isn't how much money this one brother could have versus the other brother. The reality is the relationship being earned or taken away by the actions of one another. Jesus is not about getting you wealth. Jesus is not about finding comfort. If anything, Jesus is about discomforting you, taking you out of comfort, putting you in places that rub against you just a little. Because in doing that, there's the reality. Jesus wants you to see what is real. And what is real is an air conditioning or a nice comfy place to sit, or your place to sit. Because we know how it is in church. We know how you all are, that you have your spot. And God forbid someone should sit in it. That's not real. What's real is the relationship. A real church is not what you see, but what you feel. A real church is not what you have, it's what you do. That's what Jesus was getting across. It's why I love Augustine. I hope that you have a great day. I hope you have a great week. And I hope that I get to see you again. Not physically see you, but I see your numbers. I see who saw. I see who likes. And as always, go in peace.